Om Jnana Trimandasya Jnanangana Salakaya Chaksu Sumiltan Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobishtan Stapita Yena Bhutale Sayarupa Kadamayan Dadati Sampadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sutam Padakamalan Sri Guru Vaishnavascha Sri Rupan Sakajatan Sagana Raghunatan Tapitan Sajivan Sadhuitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devan Sri Radha Krishna Parasahagana Lalita Sri Vishakavitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kantu Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radha Vrindavanitswari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapatarubhyascha kripa sundibhyevacha patitana pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo 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 mahavadanyaya krishna prema pradayate krishnaya krishna chaitanya namine gauradasya namo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Surya Veta Gadahara Sivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Anandalila Maya Vigraya, Himabadavi Chabisundaraya, Tasma Maha, Purimrasa Paraya, Chaitanya Chandaya Nama Namastute. Chaitanya Chandaya Nama Namastute. So I thank everyone for being here this evening for the Bhagavad-Gita lecture class, and also for those who are watching from Vrindavan TV. Welcome everyone. So we continue on it's a continuation of the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 3, text 42, whereby Lord Krishna is instructing Arjuna about the process of controlling the senses, how the senses can be brought under control, and as such the living entities, the spirit soul, can attain peacefulness, especially for one who have taken to spiritual life, to Krishna consciousness. So this text 42, you can just repeat after me. Indriyanim paranyaho Indriyebhya param manaha Manasastu parabudhi Yo buddhe paratastu saha Indriyani senses parani superior who are said Indriyebhya more than the senses, param superior, manaha the mind, manasa more than the mind, to also para superior, buddhi intelligence, ya who buddhi more than the intelligence, parata superior to, but saha he. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace is Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. Purport. The senses are different outlets for the activities of lust. Lust is reserved within the body, but it is given vent through the senses. Therefore, the senses are superior to the body as a whole. These outlets are not in use when there is superior consciousness or Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, the soul makes direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the hierarchy of bodily functions, as described here, ultimately ends in the Supreme Soul. Bodily action means the function of the senses, and stopping the senses means stopping all bodily actions. But since the mind is active, then even though the body may be silent and at rest, the mind will act as it does during dreaming. But above the mind is the determination of the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul proper. If therefore the soul is directly engaged with the Supreme, naturally all other subordinates, namely the intelligence, mind and senses, will be automatically engaged. In the Katha Upanishad, there is a similar passage in which it is said that the objects of sense gratification are superior to the senses, and mind is superior to the sense objects. If therefore the mind is directly engaged in the service of the Lord constantly, then there is no chance that the senses will become engaged in other ways. This mental attitude has already been explained. If the mind is engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is no chance of its being engaged in the lower propensities. In the Katha Upanishad, the soul has been described as Mahan, the great. Therefore, the soul is above all, namely the sense objects, the senses, the mind, and intelligence. Therefore, directly understanding the constitutional position of the soul is the solution of the whole problem. With intelligence, one has to seek out the constitutional position of the soul and then engage the mind always in Krishna consciousness. That solves the whole problem. A neophyte spiritualist is generally advised to keep aloof from the objects of the senses. But aside from that, one has to strengthen the mind by use of intelligence. If by intelligence one engages one's mind in Krishna consciousness, by complete surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then automatically the mind becomes stronger. And even though the senses are very strong, like serpents, they will be no more effective than serpents with broken fangs. But even though the soul is the master of intelligence and mind, and the senses also, still, unless it is strengthened by association with Krishna in Krishna consciousness, there is every chance of falling down due to the agitated mind. Indriyani paraniyahu, indriyebhya paranmanaha, manasastu parabudhi, yo buddhi paratastu saha. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So Lord Krishna is giving instruction to Arjuna about this process. Actually, this chapter has been described as Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga, which means the engagement in activities. However, it's not, when we say activities, it's not just ordinary activities by which one simply engage, by which to satisfy oneself. The real Karma Yoga is that action by which everything is directed towards Krishna, towards the Supreme Lord. Then there can be the real satisfaction of the soul. So what's being explained here is the fact that the soul, the living entity, being in the material world, has been under the binding force of material energy. And this binding force is lust, karma. Karma means the desire to enjoy the materialistic objects. As mentioned in the Bhagavad-Gita, karma esa, koda esa, samaveta yudsava, that the karma is there by which the living entities want to enjoy themselves. And because the possibility of that enjoyment is not always there, so krodha is always there, the anger. One become angry when there is no fulfillment of this calm, this sense objects. Karma means lust, the lusty. So therefore the jiva, the living entities, want to enjoy the material world. Why? How do one desire to enjoy the material world? It's all because of turning one's face away from Krishna. Anadi Krishna Bhaimukha. So the living entities turn his face away from Krishna. So as such, what happened? The moment the faces is turned away from Krishna, one becomes covered by ignorance. One becomes covered by ignorance, and that ignorance, which is the covering of one's intelligence. The intelligence is covered over by the ignorance, and then the lust take over. Lust, there's two things. You have calm and you have prem. Lust and love. Two things are there. Actually, the prem, the lust, the prem is the opposite of lust. One is the reality and one is the shadow. The desire to enjoy oneself in this material world, this is called lust. The desire to satisfy oneself, this is called lust. And then the desire to satisfy Krishna's senses, this is love. That's Krishna Indriyani Echa. Yeah, Krishna Indriyani Priti Vansa. Tare Krishna Prem Nam. So which means the desire to enjoy, to satisfy Krishna's senses, that is prem. And then Indriya Priti Echa. And the Atmendriya, this is from Chaitanya Charitamrita. He's a good scholar. So Atmendriya Priti Icha Kamna. So which means the desire to enjoy oneself, that is calm. So that is so normally all the jivas in this material world, they turn their face away from Krishna. So they want to satisfy themselves. So this is called Atmanindriya, the desire to satisfy oneself. This is calm. And this calm has been keeping the living entities in the material world, because one wants to enjoy oneself, and through the element of using the senses, the mind, and all that. So Whereas, as they said, the consuming factor is calm, by which the jiva sees himself as the enjoyer. That's the consuming factor. So, of course, the reality of that is that the living entities is overcome by the miseries of material world, the tapatraya, the threefold miseries, because there's never really any enjoyment. Enjoyment will never be there. One tries to enjoy oneself, and because there will never be any satisfaction. It's just like, as they say, that if you put fuel into a fire, the more you put, the more higher the flame will be. So which means the more one tries to fulfill the materialistic desires, the more the desire will grow. The material desires is never fulfilled. Otherwise, if material desire can actually be ever fulfilled, we have so many people who are extremely rich. So they are extremely rich, but still they want more money. They never said that, okay, it's enough. I'm a multi-billionaire. So what else do I need? Enough is enough. There's never been such. The more they have, the more they want to have. Just like some time ago, during the economic recession, there was one billionaire who's worth quite a big amount of money. Somehow he lost some money. So instead of having $50 billion, now he's having $17 billion. And he said, "Oh, this is life. This is hellish life." So he killed himself because $17 billion is not enough for him to enjoy. He said, "Oh," so he killed himself. So this is the nature of material life. So therefore, the law is saying. So the law now started explaining the gradation of the material senses for someone who are taken to spiritual life, who are taken to the process of self-realization. So the law is giving the gradation by saying that it's Indiani Paranyahu India Paramana Manasastu Parabude Yobude Parasatu Saha. So in this Sanskrit word, the Saha means the soul, the spirit soul. So normally we have the 24 material elements. When you study Sankhya Yoga, in there is the deliberation of the 24 materialistic elements. So you have the gross elements, which is the earth, because this our body, which we have here, is made up of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. This is the five gross material elements, by which the composition is enough. So, and these gross material elements, these are called dull matter. So the dull matter themselves, they cannot really function on their own. These gross materialistic senses. So the senses, they are said to be superior to the dull matter, because when the senses, you have the working senses, then you also have the sense objects. The sense object is there, which is also superior to the working senses. So you have 5 working senses, and you also have 5 sense objects. That makes 10. So because the desire is there within the sense object desires something, and then the working senses, they become attracted to it. Just like, for example, I see a beautiful woman and I want to enjoy her, so immediately the senses desire it. The sense desires for that enjoyment. Okay, now let me try to touch, and I try to touch using the dull, the gross bodily elements. So therefore, I mentioned here that the working senses is superior to the dull matter. In this way, the gross materialistic element. However, where the desires come from. What agitated desires? That is the mind. So the mind is higher than the senses, because the various senses, they basically serve as the servant of the mind. Because through the mind, one desires so many things, and one makes so many schemes through the mind. And then he also said here that now still higher than the mind is the intelligence factors, which is because with the intelligence factor, one can make a deliberation, one can make a plan. Okay, I have this desire to enjoy, I have this desire, so therefore the plan needs to be made. So one uses intelligence by which different plans are being made, and how to carry out all these different plans. So therefore, you have the gradation, you have working senses, you have the senses, you have the dull matter, then you have the mind, and then you have the intelligence. Now, as mentioned here, however, he, the soul, the Atma, is higher than the intelligence. Is higher than the intelligence. So, because without the soul, both gross and sorrow elements, they become useless without the soul. But however, the soul, the living entities, it's not meant to be in the material world perpetually. As Prabhupada mentioned in the beginning of this commentary, that the outlets, when the outlets which are being used, that these outlets, when there is a superior consciousness or Krishna consciousness, then the soul can make direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, in this particular text, Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, so he had written, in this following this pattern of thought. So he said that the wise, they say that the senses are superior to the body made of 5 gross elements. This is because they are the occupants of the body. They are not sorrow and are not destroyed when the gross body perishes. Because basically, when one gives for the body, when this time for leaving the body comes, normally the sorrow body do not die. Only the gross body dies. The sorrow bodies follows or takes one to the next life, the sorrow body. And because all the desires are there within the mind, so the one's next body is formed according to particular desires, which one has carried from the previous life, and then the next body is given out. So the sorrow body, which is made up of the senses, the gross, the sorrow senses, the mind and intelligence. So it follows one, and it will be there until one actually leaves this material world. It will always be there. So the mind is superior to the senses, because the mind sets the senses in motion during the waking state, and during sleep, the mind remains as a ruler. So why the senses, as well as being the visible material ones with which we are familiar, also exist in sorrow form. Just like when we sleep at night, the body become basically, when we go to sleep, the body become very much non-existent. But the mind is always active, basically. And just like sometimes when we're in a dreamy state, we have different impressions which has been made to the mind. So the mind is always functioning, whereas the gross body does not. So, but the mention here is that intelligence is superior to the mind, because the intellect's function of determining truth brings about the mental function of decision, sankalpa, That which is superior to the intelligence is the Jivatman residing in the body, whose very form is knowledge. So, being realized as distinct from the body, senses, mind, and intelligence, it is the cause of complete destruction of lust. So basically, which means if one is able to control the senses, the mind, with the proper utilization of one's intelligence, then the lust can be brought under control. So, like Srila Prabhupada made mention of Katha. There's a verse in the Katha Upanishad which basically describes the same thing. So in that verse it says, Indriya parariyata atebhyascha paramanaha manasastu para buddhi buddhi atma maham parao. So it's the same. This is the verse from the Katha Upanishad. The sense objects are superior to or more powerful than the senses because they are able to attract the senses. The mind is superior to the sense objects because it is the root of the actions of the senses in pursuit of sense objects. So basically, we simply have to understand, how the mind works, and how the mind works, how the senses operate in a proper coordination of with the mind. So in the second chapter of this Bhagavad-Gita, so Arjuna, he was asking the Lord about how does one become fixed in intelligence. It's called Stita Pratigyan. So Arjuna was asking Krishna. He was saying, Stita Pratigya Stita Pratigya Sakabasa Samadhi Stasya Kesava Stita di Kim Prabhasheta Kim Masita Prajeta Kim. So Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna, this is from Bhagavad-Gita, 2nd chapter, text 54. He asked, "Oh my dear Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk?" So this is the question which Arjuna asking Lord Krishna. Now, in the reply, the Lord says, Prajati yada kama savam prata manogatam atmani ivatmana tushta sita pragyas cha tadachaduchite. That the Supreme, the Lord said, O Pata, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then it is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So which means mentioned here that when the man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification. Now we know sometimes in the beginning of a spiritual life, sometimes we are taught to curb the senses, that if you want to make spiritual progress, then the senses must be brought under control. And sometimes there is the artificial control of the senses. The example is given that sometimes in the dam, when there is a big flowing of river, and sometimes the dam is used to control the flow of the river. Just like there are so many dams here. So the big river is coming, and then there's a dam that is put there just to curb the big flowing river. Even though the dam is there, even though the river is coming, so just by putting the dam there does not mean that the water is no more there. The water is still there. The big flowing river is still there. It's just its action It's just been curbed temporarily. Its action just been curbed. So therefore there's no flowing. But the moment the dam is open, the water will be flowing like anything, big rush, the water will be rushing the moment the dam is open. So similarly also, when we try to control the senses by different efforts. So we try to control the senses by different efforts. So it doesn't mean that the senses have been brought under control. Because as long as we're in the material world, the senses will never be brought under control. Even though one may make so many efforts. It's not possible. However, as mentioned, just like before I come to this next section here, that let's say we are temple brahmachari, we send a temple, when the temple there is no, we stay in brahmachari ashram, there's no presence of the female is there, we don't see the female forms. So therefore, because the mind is not senses, the mind is not agitated because the forms is not there, But the moment we go out on the road, we see females, all kind of form, then the senses become attracted. Then the desire to enjoy is there. So which means the senses will always be there, the mind will always be there. There was a good story one time. There were two brahmacharis. They were walking on the path. They were walking, and these two brahmacharis, as they were going, they came near a river. And as they came near the river, just before they were crossing the river, there was a young lady who needed to cross the river. So this lady asked for their help. So one of the brahmacharis said, yes, okay, I will help you. So this brahmachari, he carries the young ladies on his back and then cross the river. So after crossing the river, the lady, she went away, and these two brahmacharis, they were going. So after a long period of time, the other brahmachari asked the other one who had taken the lady on his back. He said, I cannot believe that you actually did that. Carrying a woman on your back? I can't believe you actually did that. So the person, the brahmachari who had carrying the lady on his back, he replied, he said, well, I carried the lady on my back for only a few minutes, but you've been carrying her on your mind for more than 1 hour. So you see, I carried her only for a few minutes and it was gone, but you have been carrying her because you have been thinking about how could this be, carrying this lady on his back, he carrying this lady, how could this be? Keep thinking about this. He said that you've been carrying her on your mind for more than 1 hour. So just see, where is the sense control here? So which brought us to the point that unless one develop a higher taste, unless the higher taste is developed, then there'll be no question of giving up the desire for the lower taste. So in one of the Shruti said that Rishikesh Sevana, what is Sevana Uchate, that Rishikesh, that because Krishna is the Lord of the senses, so which means one should please the sense of Krishna. One should apply all one's senses, because Krishna is the Lord of the senses. So one should simply see oneself, all one's senses as meant to please Krishna. If one does that, then there can be dissatisfaction. Now, the famous verse in the Bhagavad-Gita, in the 2nd chapter, it mentioned here that Visaya Vinivatante, Nira Arasha Dehinam, Rasava Jamraso Pyasya, Parandishto Nivatate. That the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense object remains. But seizing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste is fixing consciousness. Consciousness means it's fixing Krishna consciousness. So which means unless we become attracted to Krishna, unless we develop a higher taste of Krishna consciousness, one cannot really give up the desires for the lower aspect. Trying to control the mind, the senses, it's so difficult. Subari Muni, he needed to control his senses, Subari Muni. So Subari Muni, he said, for me to control my senses, I should go underneath a river and perform my meditation. So Subari Muni, he went under a river, and for several years he was meditating. For several years of meditating. So one time, he just opened his eye, because normally when you meditate, the eyes are closed. So he just opened his eye, and then he saw two fishes. They were copulating. At the moment he saw two fishes copulating, the desire for sex, for lust, it comes on in his mind. It comes out. He said, "Oh, now I must enjoy a woman. I must enjoy a woman." So he came out of the river and went to King Mandata. He went to the King Mandata that, "Give me one of your daughters to marry." So the king said, "Well, I'm glad you have come. You are a great sage. I have no problem with that. But I have 50 daughters who all are very, very beautiful. But I don't think any of my daughters would be willing to marry you. Just look at your family. So everything's so twisted up, because he has been under the water for dozens of years. So which means his body is his skin is completely all rusted." He said, the king said, I don't think any of my daughters would be willing to marry you. So because he's a great sage, having a mystic power, he said, "Don't worry, no problem." So having a mystic power, so he transformed himself into a very young, handsome young man, become very, very super attractive. So the king called his daughters. So all the 50 of them came, and the king said that, "Okay, this person wants to marry you." So all the king's daughters, they said, "Oh, very, very attractive man. We all want to marry him." So all the 50 of them got married to the Muni, to the sage. So now, Subari Muni now married to 50 daughters. So just see, a sage, he was meditating, performing so many austerities to control the senses, to control the mind. All of a sudden, because all these control are considered to be artificial, which means any attempt to control the senses and is not aimed at Krishna, then it's simply artificial. So therefore, it's mentioned here that Parandistonivartate, that one has to develop a higher taste, which means one must be attracted to Krishna. Attraction to Krishna must be there. So Srila Prabhupada, he had written in the comment to this verse, he said, "Unless one is transcendentally situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. You are sick, you go to the hospital, doctor said that don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat it, if you want to get better. So of course, you have to follow the doctor's advice, because if you want to get better. But that doesn't mean that you lose your desire for eating such items, because the moment you get better, you will start eating the same items again. That's the reality, So Prabhupada said, similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual processes like Ashtanga Yoga, in the matter of Yam, Niyam, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyan, etc., is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. So which means we should not try to artificially control our senses unless Krishna factor is there. Normally, when devotees, when they chant, when they're in each association of Krishna, when they're in each association, each other's association, they are discussing Krishna Katha, the topics about Krishna. So they become enlivened by such discussions. They become very, the senses awakened by such discussion about Krishna Katha. So the senses become awakened. They chant Krishna's name. They sing and dance in the kirtans. Like Rupa Goswami is saying that, by hearing Krishna's name is so sweet that one desires to have millions and millions of years because it's so sweet. And by chanting the Krishna's name, highly elevated that one desires to have millions and millions of mouth. When the gopis, when they are looking at Krishna, they say, "Oh, Krishna, you're so beautiful, and your form is so great that sometimes when we blink our eyes, we have to chastise Brahma that what kind of creator is this that he has, created he has given such an impediment by which we have to blink in our eyes that we cannot see Krishna continuously." So when one engage in the activities of Krishna consciousness, so which means because one has developed a higher taste, so one loses taste for anything material. One loses taste for anything low. Paramdrishta Nivartate. If I eat rasagula, ultimately I don't want to eat Corella. Corella is very bitter, whereas rasagula is very, very nice preparation. So any kind of material taste, material enjoyment is just like Corella, a very, very bitter thing. Whereas Krishna consciousness, the life of Krishna consciousness, here by Krishna, associated with Krishna devotees, that's the real taste. It gives enjoyment. It gives real bliss to the living entities. So this is the thing. So therefore, the taste of Krishna consciousness is, is the most sublime. So this is the gist of this, of this verse. Practically this whole chapter, which the Lord have been deliberating from the last section of the second chapter up to this end of this chapter. So there's one more verse before the end of this third chapter. So I'm stopping. Any question? Yeah.
Where are all our material desires coming from? Because mostly we don't know what we desire until we desire it.
Yeah.
Where are material desires coming from?
Because the living entity always have to have desire. Desire always have to be there. Now, the desire is, the material desires come out of ignorance, the ignorance of our real identity. So ignorance is the main factor, the ignorance. Because of that ignorance of the reality that we are part of Krishna. As I said at the beginning, that the moment we turn our face away from Krishna, the ignorance covers us, and then the loss comes in. The loss whereby we want to enjoy. So ignorance is basically the cause of material desires. Is the ignorance.
What's the immediate cause? Could be regarded as a remote cause. What's the immediate cause?
No, immediate cause is ignorance, the reality. That's the immediate cause. Or you have that's the cause of material desires. As long as we're in the material world, means we desire to enjoy, because we want to enjoy. So desire is there. We have so desire is the natural part of the living entities. Now it can be spiritual, because desires always have to be there. Like Prabhupada will always say that one can never be desireless. So it's either one desire Krishna or one desire Maya. So desire will always be there. The Mayavadi, they want to curb the desires so that they can be liberated, but they are never successful. Because desire will always be there. This desire is ingrained part of the soul. Okay.
So what are the desires of the mind then?
No. The mind orchestrates, made the orchestration. Because the desire is part of the soul. So desire can either be desire to enjoy, either to enjoy oneself or to enjoy or to give Krishna enjoyment. But the mind, because the mind works with the senses. So therefore the mind makes all the arrangement. Sometimes sankapa, vikapa, sometimes something is acceptable, sometimes something is not acceptable. But desire is there, and that desire is situated within the mind. So basically, if we're able to control the mind, then desires can be curbed. If the mind is able to be controlled. So basically, the desires is intricate with the mind, and then work with the senses. The senses make all the arrangements by which to fulfill the particular desire. So the senses make the proper arrangement that way. So desire is there, always there, part of the soul. We cannot. It's not that there's immediate cause of desire. Desire will always be there, always. It's just a matter of what we are desiring. Are we desiring for Krishna? Or are we desiring Maya? It's one of the two. If you desire Krishna, we are in the material world. If you desire Maya, we're in the material world. It's one of the two. In the spiritual world, desire is there also. But everyone desires to satisfy Krishna in the spiritual world. But desire is always there. We can never curb the desire. We can never get rid of desire. It's just a matter of what are we desiring. That's all. So therefore, we are encouraged, we are advised to associate with devotees, to associate with advanced devotees, who can enable us to make proper adjustment. Basically, you wanted to say something?
Correction. As we are in Krishna consciousness, those devotees are Krishna consciousness. They are practicing Krishna consciousness. They are reading Bhagavad-Gita, Bhagavatam, Krishna book, everything they are doing in Krishna consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And also they give discourses on Bhagavatam also, so many things. But even though so many things they are doing, but still the minds, they are disturbed when they see beautiful woman.
Mm-hmm.
So how come this consciousness is changing from Krishna consciousness to the material consciousness?
Because the living entities is fundamentally weak. Even those we are fundamentally weak, even though we have taken to spiritual life, so that weakness is always there, and that weakness, so we always get overcome by material energy because of the weakness that is there. Because as long as the soul in the material world, it's overcome by the weakness. So, and that's why, as it says, how do we stay strong? Unless we really take advantage of the process that's been given to us. The scriptures say, sadhu sangha, savasashakoya, that one must associate with advanced person, advanced devotees. And that association must be positive association, which means we follow their ways, we develop the qualities, of simplicity, humble, all these things. And also one actually seeks shelter of the Lord and his devotees. When you reach in the Saranagati of Bhakti Mutaku. It's so full of prayer, it's so full of, my dear Lord, I'm so weak. Because in spiritual life, we can never say that, I've defeated my senses, I'm now, So which means we always have to be constantly be in a prayerful all the time. Because we have to admit our weakness, we have to admit it. If you don't admit our weakness, so which means we are not truthful to ourselves. So if you are not truthful to ourselves, we are not willing to admit our weakness, then that thing you are talking about, that we are giving nice pravachans and all these things, reading so many books, still it's not showing in our characters. We cannot, the moment we go out, we see the object of the senses, we cannot resist ourselves. The moment we see the nice palatable dishes, we want to, we're ready to eat it. We're not willing to control ourselves. So Mahaprabhu, when he was instructing Raghunath Goswami, he told him, Arakabe, what is that? Aranakabe? Yeah. Yeah. That do not eat palatable food, do not wear luxurious clothes, don't talk nonsense. Gramya Sunya Kata, do not talk nonsense, and always be humble. Then in this way you'll be able to attain Krishna's mercy. So this is instruction. This is the only instruction that my Prabhu gave to Raghunath Goswami. When Raghunath Goswami, after he renounced everything, he renounced his home, everything he gave up. He was, he came from a very rich family. He had so much wealth, but he gave up everything. So he went to Puri, and then Mahaprabhu put him under the shirt of Swarup Damodara. And then Swarup Damodara asked Mahaprabhu that Raghunath Goswami will like to ask a question. And then Mahaprabhu, gave this advice. So basically, as devotees, we have to do the right thing. We have all these examples in the scripture, like Chitramita. So if you do these things, if we are not attached to gratify our mouth, voracious eaters, or we're not, if you try to live simple life, simplicity, then this problem you are talking of will not come. But unfortunately, because of our weakness, and we're not taking advantage of the process, so this is there. That is there. So basically, it's up to individual devotees.
We are taking sadhu sangha and doing everything.
But what is it? What sadhu? Sadhu is the real sadhu is.
Sadhu sangha.
I know the real sadhu is very, very rare. Just because we are together doesn't mean that I'm a sadhu. The real sadhu. See, when you are with the real sadhu, the atmosphere is very auspicious. A real sadhu, it makes atmosphere very auspicious. Not just because we are same devotees doesn't mean that we are sadhu sangha. No. Because if you see the real sadhu, they are very, very attached to Krishna, and they don't like to waste a moment without Krishna consciousness. And whatever they actually, as they say, they are the ornament of the universe. For example, if you are in the presence of Prabhupada, everything is totally different. So not that because not by the dress, it's sadhu is not known by the dress. Just because I'm wearing a dress, Kantimala, that does not make me sadhu. There are so many Kali chelas, who pass on, who make people think they are sadhus. It doesn't mean that they are sadhus. So we really have to search out for the sadhus. We have to beg Krishna to please lead us to a real sadhu. Because if we get a real sadhu sangha, our life will be different. That's a fact of life. It's a personal experience. If a real sadhu sangha, our life will change. That's a fact. So if you don't have it, we have to pray for it. We have to cry for it if you don't have it. Okay.
With your permission, I would like to use this.
Huh?
With your permission, I would like to give some comment on that question.
Okay, sure.
Like when we say like we are doing a lot of sadhus and we are in this movement from 40 years, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
But when we see our presence in the material world from time immemorial,
Yeah.
we are associated with material energy from time immemorial.
Mm-hmm.
That impression is already there in the mind.
Yeah.
From every life, whichever life you know, the mind and everything goes with us.
Mm-hmm.
So that impression will take time to build.
Yeah, that takes.
Just 20 years or 30 years in Krishna consciousness is not such a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We have to associate with pure devotees
Mm-hmm.
and take their instructions. That's what Prabhupada says in the last part of this program. That we have to stay in the association of the devotee all the time. Association means like we are hearing from Srila Prabhupada now. We are taking association with Srila Prabhupada. And then take that as instruction in the life.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, Bhalana, you gave that Bhavinath as the Swamis. So this is like instruction from this class.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exactly.
So that impression will take time to do.
Yeah, because of our fundamental weakness, it takes time. But again, we have to stick. We have to keep doing it. we cannot give up. That's the thing, We have to keep doing it. And eventually the love will be merciful upon us. Eventually. The love will be merciful, Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.